Good Wednesday morning, Market Chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market show with this man, Dmitry Pargamanik. You there, D?
Hello, Will. How are you?
Good.
You're putting up the disclaimer?
Yep. Let me put it up.
Okay. Yep. Good morning, everyone. While Will's doing it, just a quick reminder, Will and I and Market Chameleon, we're not a registered investment advisor. We're not a broker dealer. We're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing ideas. If you need advice, call your registered investment advisor, call your broker. That's what they're there for. There's the disclaimer. And with that, I'm going to share my screen. While I'm doing it, if you're joining us for the first time, Will and I, we do these shows in the morning to try to help answer questions you may have about the Market Chameleon tools, the data, or the analytics. If you have a question, type it into the live chat on YouTube. Will's monitoring it. He'll read it back to me. And to give you guys a couple minutes to put those questions in, we'll start out taking a look at the pre-market report, see what kind of insights we could get on what's trading in pre-market hours, and then we'll move on to the questions. All right, so pre-market report, these are stocks trading in the pre-market hours. And up top here, we have a calendar view, which does allow you to go back in history if you wanted to see what happened on a particular historical date in the pre-market hours. You can do that. We do have summary stats also up here, so we could just kind of see if there are any trends in the last week. Today, we're on January 24th, and so far from a high level, we have 659 stocks trading higher in the pre-market hours, 174 stocks trading lower. We have 100, as far as volume goes, we have 148.5 million shares trading on up volume, 114 million shares trading on down volume. If we convert that volume to dollar value, we have $4.4 billion worth of stock trading higher versus $471 million worth of stock trading lower. And that appears to indicate that the trading in the pre-market hours has a bullish or positive sentiment lean. Let's move down, look at another report from a couple different perspectives for the pre-market, and then we'll move on to the questions. Down here, now we have a list of stock symbols that are trading in the pre-market hours. We have our most active stocks, our biggest percentage gainers, biggest percentage decliners. We see that 217 stocks made our biggest percentage gainers list, 46 on our large decliners list. So from that angle, it also points to a more bullish bias in the pre-market trading. To make this list, we do set thresholds that the stocks have to meet: liquidity, price, volume, because things in a pre-market trade with low volume, less liquidity. But to make this list, any stock that's traded on a major U.S. exchange, if it meets our thresholds, it can make this list. So we'll have small cap stocks in there, ETFs. It could be a leveraged ETF or an inverse ETF, a closed-end fund. So pretty much any security, as long as it meets those thresholds. So to narrow down this list, we could use the filters above. And if you have a watch list, you could filter by your watch list. We're going to use this filter in ETF. For our example, I'm going to click on it. You get a drop-down menu to select from. We're going to pick SPY, which is the S&P 500 ETF. And when you do that, the list below will get filtered by stocks that are holdings in the SPY ETF, which are the S&P 500 constituents. And here we see that there are 38 stocks that made our biggest percentage gainers list and 12 on our largest decliners. So also by ratio of 3-to-1, that indicates that traders in the pre-market hours so far have a more bullish sentiment. So Will, I gave it a couple minutes. I'll take questions if you have them.
Yeah, we have a couple questions. First one was from Wilkin, who actually started off by saying, "Good morning, all. I started using MC and have found some very useful tools." So thanks for that, Wilkin. Then he goes on. He asks, "Can you show how do we get to the large volume burst window on Market Chameleon, please?"
The large volume burst.
Yeah, and just I'll put the other question was left over from yesterday, and I see I think it was from DB. He's on today. He was asking about the new feature, when you think that may be available. So those are the two questions we have so far.
Okay.
All
Yep.
right.
Thanks. So let's start out with the large volume burst. So I'm going to come up here under stocks. We have this report here, S&P 500 volume burst. And this gives a summary of the volume bursts in all the S&P 500 stocks. Okay, so it looks at, and we'll discuss it in a second, but what this is doing is looking at the large volume bursts alone in isolation. Okay, and then it tracks it on a cumulative basis throughout the day and then reports the net imbalance. Okay. So what we'll do is let's go to an individual symbol here, and we'll pick one out. So over here are the largest S&P 500 imbalances. So we have Procter & Gamble, CMP, Verizon on the buy, from the buy side. Here's from the sell side. Which one's interesting? Maybe Netflix, right? You want to take a look at Netflix, since I think that they just reported. So let's see what happened in Netflix yesterday. All right. So I'm going to type in Netflix. And under this stocks menu, we're going to go to price action. And we need regular hours trading. So we're going to go. So this is so far the price action today. We're in the pre-market hours. But I'm going to click here on regular hours, or you could just pick trading hours here, the VWAP. Okay. So I'm going to go to regular hours. And by the way, I think like as I'm looking at this section is going to be changing as well, because I know I'm working on different pieces from here. So these are the volume bursts up top. All right, there's buy and sell, and they're coming from this data table over here. All right, so these are showing summary stats for each minute's worth of trades. So every minute we capture all the trades in the stock for that minute, and then we analyze those trades. Okay, and then there you have an analysis of these trades. And up here, what it's doing is tracking the minutes that have very large volumes, big volume bursts, way above what we normally see. And these are tracked based on typical volume for a certain period of the day. Okay, so from 9:30, let's say, to 10, the volumes are higher. From 10 to 11, 11 to 12, they're lower. 3 to 4, they're higher. So it's looking at the typical volume on average in a minute. and then it's tracking that volume and saying, okay, if something's exceeds that typical volume by more than 3 standard deviations, all right, then, or I think it's like 2.8, something like that, 2.8 standard deviations, then flag that minute. So you can see there's a lot yesterday in Netflix, and that, so this might not be unusual in Netflix to see more volume the day before earnings. We might see it today too, because we're comparing it actually to the rolling 20 days of volume. So I'll take a look at it. I might have to enhance that actually. I'm going to look at it and maybe enhance that to look at typical volume, day before earnings, now that I'm looking at this report. But let's just stay on this. Okay, so as of this moment, what we're doing is comparing the typical volume. Okay, here we go, in the last 30 days. Right, so that's what we're doing. We're looking at the last 30 days, and that's what we're comparing it to. So then when we see a volume burst, right, we tag the minutes over here. These are the minutes that we saw it. These are the buy, and these are the sell. Okay. So let's say at 10:03, if I click on that, it'll take me to the 10:03. So I could see here, here's 10:03, and we saw a volume burst. Okay, so this is the how many standard deviations above the average. So this is the volume over here. Oops, I shouldn't have done that. Hold on. I just resorted everything. Let's go back to 10:03. So this is the volume, okay, which is 3.7 standard deviations above what we typically see around this time period. Okay. So now we see that a lot of volume. There was a big volume burst. There was a lot of volume. So then what we're trying to then determine is, well, when that volume came in, what was the impact on the stock, right? So if the impact on the stock was negative, then we're assuming that there was more sell pressure than buy pressure, right? Because it takes more sellers to move down the prices. If the price impact on the stock was higher, then there was more buy pressure because you need to lift offers. There needs to be more buy pressure to lift offers. So then what we do is go and say, like, okay, in this minute, we see that the volume ticked way up, 3.7 standard deviations above. And we see here that the stock in that minute, the VWAP price, the volume weighted average price in that minute was 29 cents higher than the VWAP price in the previous minute. So there's an uptick, right? That there must have been buy pressure within that minute to move the prices higher. So then what do? We designate that as a buy burst right here. Okay, so that's an example what we're doing here. So then what do we do up top? So these are the individual ones if you want to see them. And if you click on this time, jump to minute, you could go and look at that minute. So these numbers here, okay, are a running cumulative number throughout the day. So if there's only one buy burst, we would put it in here, one buy burst. This converts the volume to dollar value. So it says, well, what was the volume? What was the VWAP price of that volume? So in dollar terms, that the dollar value of the buy burst. Then it captures the VWAP price, right? So this is the VWAP price. And then it tells you the average the average price impact on that buy burst, right? Was it a high impact, a low impact? Well, how do we know? Because you could have a buy burst could have a huge amount of volume, but it only went up 1 penny. Or you could have a huge amount of volume and the stock could have gone up $1. So what we do is track also the price impact of the buy burst and the price impact of the sell burst. Okay, so over here, these are actually the summary stats, so these are totals and averages. So 76 total buy bursts yesterday for a cumulative value of $1.5 billion worth of stock. And what about where was the stock when this happened, right? Because we're going to track the reference prices of the stocks where this was happening. So the volume average weighted price of all the buy bursts was $489.51. All right, that's for the buy burst. What about the average impact on the stock? So sometimes it could have gone 5 cents, sometimes it could have gone up 20 cents, whatever. So what was that, usual impact on the stock when these buy bursts came in? Is the stock illiquid when these buy bursts came in, or is it very liquid? Like, what's going on? So the average impact on the stock was 35 cents on the buy burst. On the sell burst, we see that there's 60 total for a cumulative value of 1.1 billion. The VWAP price of all of them was 488.46, and on average, the price impact was 39 cents. So there were more buy bursts than sell bursts yesterday. Okay, that's what we see so far. They exceeded it by, looks like, $400 million worth of stock. And we could see here that the buys, right, looks like the VWAP price exceeded the VWAP price of the sell. So as the stock was going on, they continued, right? So it wasn't equally balanced. It looks like as the stock's going up, the buy bursts, the intensity of the buy burst continued. All right, and we could even see here. So it looks like even though time-wise it looks like they were distributed pretty equally, but the intensity of the buys exceeded the sells. Okay, so that's the buys versus sells today. Then we have, what do we see on a typical day? So yesterday was unusual because Netflix, we have to keep that in mind. Yesterday's Netflix activity we probably would have expected to see that these are, more than normal, just because Netflix about to report earnings. So we know that volumes go up, volumes and options go up. That's typical of it happens. So we are comparing this to the last 30 days, but I don't think this is necessarily unusual to be above the average. All right, because those are just the patterns and trends we know exist. That volumes they go up across the board around earnings. But let's just say if there was no, if we didn't have any earnings, if it was just no news, no regular day, then we could compare and say, well, something's going on here, because usually we get 6 buy bursts on a typical day. If today's 76, well, what's going on? That's 12 times the it's way above what we typically see. And here we have $1.5 billion worth of stock versus $97 million worth of stock. So these are showing us the 30-day stats, right? The 30-day stats over here. So even in the last 30 days, if we averaged out, typically, looks like that we usually see more burst to the buy side than the sell side, right? If we usually get more buy burst than sell burst. You know, the value of the buy burst typically exceed the value of the sell burst. In the last 30 days, we could see where the VWAPs were. So more, more push to the upside. And what we also see is usually, the price impact on the sell burst is greater than on the buy. And it could be for different reasons. One is it's less liquid to the downside. That's one reason. Another is how it trades. So when we see a buy burst, sometimes the volume ticks up because the buyers notice all of a sudden a large, limit order on the book, right? Like all of a sudden they start, and then they'll grab it, quickly without causing a big impact, right? So if all of a sudden, buyers sitting there, and as soon as a big order comes in on a book, they'll scoop it. Well, the result of that is that even though we get a big burst, the impact to the stock is not great, because it's just scoop, because the buy bursts aren't going in there and just sweeping, the books across the board with urgency. They're patient and waiting for those offers to come in, and then they grab them. So there are different reasons you have to take into consideration, and I'm not going to go into the last 30 days analysis right now with it. It'll take us a long time and a lot of explanations, probably a whole webinar on its own. But this is where you would go to look at an individual stock's buy burst. And, you could.
D?
Yep.
Wilkins says, thanks. The large volume bursts you have, he says, large volume bursts, you have another window that shows multiple stocks at the same time with high volume bursts also. I think that's what he wanted to see. I was referring to that one. Although I like what Dimitri is showing me as well.
Yeah. I think that report is not available, actually. I know I'm testing it out.
All right.
Internally. So I think that the one I showed you was available. I don't
You want
think
to just show it just to see if that's the one he's asking about, just real quick?
Well, which one is he asking about? I don't know.
He says large volume bursts. You have another report that shows multiple stocks at the same time with high volume bursts. Wilkin, if you want to send over a screenshot, email it to
I don't know. I mean, I know I have one
MarketChameleon.com.
internally, but I know that not one that's available, not one that's available to you guys. So yeah, I'm not sure which one you're looking at. Yeah, if you send me a screenshot, that would be, or send the link, put the link in there, maybe.
Yeah, screenshot or link, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And we can hit that tomorrow. We did have another question from we had a question, I think it was from I don't know if it was from DB or MW, but they were asking about the feature you'd been showing last week, and you had the IBKR webinar on. When will that maybe be available was a question.
Yeah, no, thank you. That feature, we've been struggling with some of the bugs in that feature, that it's been, it's been rough as we fix one bug, all of a sudden we move on, another one shows up. So we want to, fix all the bugs and the performance as well before we push it out, because there are two things in there that we're struggling with. Is the new bugs appear just because when we look at and the feature you're referring to is our multi-leg analyzer. Okay, so we were looking at all the multi-leg trades trading in the market. Here, go to option block trades. So what we do is we isolate all the multi-leg trades like this. See multi-leg trades, and then we run them through our software. And when we run them through the software itself, it's an algorithm. It starts to stitch the related, what it interprets are all the related legs, and then makes interpretation on the strategy, and then displays a report. Here's what were here's the strategies that were traded in multi-leg trades. Okay, so the part of the issue, I'm just going to tell you because I know, I've been promising to push it out, and I eventually will. But part of the issue is that there are a lot of multi-leg trades, a lot of them. And when we run them through the software, what happens is throughout the day, we're accumulating them, and there's a performance issue. I'll show you here. Because this software is running a lot of stuff in the background. But you could see here, multi-leg trades over here. This is the options volume, for all the stocks, singly listed stocks without indexes. And if we took all the option volume that traded yesterday, 43% of that option volume are multi-leg trades. So you could see a huge amount of the option trades are multi-leg. It's not an insignificant amount. And when you're talking about those types of volumes, we're talking about millions of, trades here, that what's going on, that you're going to start finding nuances and bugs here and there, right? Just because just the sheer amount of data is going through, and all of a sudden something that was not an error yesterday, all of a sudden, oh, well, that's unusual. Well, we didn't see that before. And then you have performance issues as well, where what will happen is when we tested, when we tested internally, well, we only, we usually have like one tester, right? Me at a time, right? So when you're querying the database with one person, it's much different than if we had 100 people at the same time querying it, right? Or 1,000 people at the same time querying it. All of a sudden, you're like, whoa, you're trying to, that means it could lock up, right? And I don't want to do that to you guys. So those are the things that we pass one phase of the testing and it looks good, but then when we try to do a more rigorous test, then we see problems. And those are the things that the developers are working, and sometimes it's not easy to solve, even like one bug or one, maybe the solution at the end is easy, but figuring out what the issue is sometimes the hard part. Like, what is the bottleneck? Where's the cause of this bug? So, I'm optimistic that to me, what's upsetting is that it's kind of, it's working as a tester for me. Yes, it's working because I'm one person, doing it. But once we start like doing a little bit more rigorous, use, that's when the things started popping up that there were issues, and that's why we don't want to release it, because it's going to cause lots of problems.
Well, perfect. DB says thank you. That was a good explanation of what's going on internally to get this out. We're working hard to get it out to you guys. I sent over a link. It was something Wilton saw in the glossary sections. He does think you touched on it, but I'll just send you a link so you can confirm what he was asking. We may get back to that tomorrow. We did have a question, which was kind of broad, asking you for, can you use Market Chameleon to do an SPY analysis? And there's so many features. Bala, that came from you. If you want to email support at Market Chameleon, just what feature you'd like to look at with around SPY, that would be a great help with the question tomorrow. But those are two outstanding questions. Awesome job, D. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Will. Thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day. Hope to see you guys tomorrow.
Trade in peace, Chameleons. Everyone have a great day. We'll talk later, D. Bye.